what are the limits of the government's use of these kinds of powers that really could be just as serious, if not more serious, than direct censorship.
You're a very distinguished First Amendment scholar. When you look at this situation, do you think Harvard, who is almost certainly going to sue the federal government, I assume, do you think it will prevail in court? Do you think the universities have, a strong case?
I do think they have a very strong case. I mean, there are two fundamental problems here under a First Amendment analysis. One is, to what extent should the First Amendment sort of supervise or control government efforts through their funding, contracting, and other powers to stop the government from limiting speech in that form. Again, First Amendment has many, many cases that say the government cannot directly censor speech. What about the efforts of the government to censor speech by employing its powers of dispensing funding? I have no doubt that as applied to these actions of the government, that universities and Harvard would win. The second issue is the extent to which universities should be entitled to a special status under the First Amendment. And there are some great opinions and some decisions that really do recognize the special role that universities play in advancing knowledge, the search for truth, and therefore are entitled to special protections. Those two doctrines, those two areas of the First Amendment are really what's at stake here. I'm fairly confident that at the end of the day, Harvard and other universities would prevail on these claims.
Next on GPS, when Lee Bollinger was president of Columbia, he had a tussle with Donald Trump. It ended with Trump calling Bollinger terrible and a dummy. Is that why the Trump administration began its assault with Columbia University? That story when we come back.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS.
Trump Hitler is trying to control free speech in universities by not just limiting speech, but taking away funding and forcing universities to capitulate. That's illegal. A song by Paul Beckman. Paul Beckman was also the new and first founder of a new support group for conquering and overcoming the fear of death, as well as the new and first founder of a support group for individual and collective enlightenment on planet Earth. Trump Hitler is trying to control freedom of speech for universities. Not only just trying to control the free speech that people can speak and say and utter, but he also is trying to go after funding and saying, blunder, blunder, if you don't follow what I order you to do. Me being the president and the administration too. If you don't follow what we want you to do and control you, then we'll take away your funding and free speech combined. But don't you know? That's illegal. That's illegal. That's illegal. There's a word for that. In business, that would be considered protectionism. And that's illegal too. Trump Hitler never plays by the rules. He never plays fair. He makes his own rules. But, if you're going to be president of the United States, you got to follow some rules. You got to follow the rule of law. That's right. If you don't do that, you're going to have all the problems you're creating now for America and for the world. Trying to make people suffer. You idiot. You asshole. You shouldn't ought to be doing that.
Believing that is the basis of what is happening now to Colombia after more than or nearly 2 decades.
Talk about the thing that seems to me to be in peril here, which is that the universities in the United States and the federal government have had this very synergistic relationship ever since the late 40s, where the government provides a lot of funding for research, the universities do it, and they compete for those government grants, and that system has seemed to produce the greatest scientific and technological breakthroughs any country has had. What happens in a circumstance where the government pulls back this funding or makes it conditional, as you say, on various kind of administrative issues, admissions issues that it wants?
So, from my perspective, and I'm from years freed, I mean, 2 of the greatest achievements in America in the last 100 years have been, 1, the First Amendment, and 2, universities. The First Amendment, the first cases of the Supreme Court were not until 1919, even though the First Amendment was part of the Bill of Rights from 1789. Since 1919, the Supreme Court has had hundreds of cases. There have been thousands of cases from the courts establishing an incredible jurisprudence of free speech in America. It's become part of the identity of what America is all about. The second major achievement of America has been our universities. So they were small colleges that really were limited to certain fields of inquiry. And over the last 100 years, we have built them into powerhouses of a search for knowledge and creativity. And both the First Amendment and universities share these values of an openness, a kind of creativity that people are willing to challenge conventional ways of thinking, a search for truth, but primarily and fundamentally a respect for knowledge. So when those are assaulted, as is happening now, it's incredibly reckless. And in my view, the consequences could be tragic. When a lab has to shut down, the experiments are ended, the people are laid off, that work is put in suspension and possibly even reversal. I am hearing daily from faculty who are thinking about leaving the country, and I don't think that's at risk of a major flow of people out of the country, but it is happening. I think there is an intimidation that is certainly going on with respect to international students. I think it will follow with even speech, regular speech on campuses. So these are very fragile achievements. I mean, they have taken a century to build up. They are stunningly successful. And now we're finding them shockingly at risk. I mean, this is an encroachment unlike anything we've seen, and the consequences, as I said, could be tragic.
Would you describe this as a kind of path to authoritarian government?
I think there's no other way to describe it. I mean, these are techniques that are designed, strategies that are designed to intimidate, if not crush, opposition and dissent, and we're seeing them in full force against our leading institutions and against individuals. Under the First Amendment, we've gone through many periods where the government has acted in ways and the society has acted in ways that are...
The consequences on free speech could be tragic by Trump, Hitler, and his administration and his Third Reich and MAGA. The consequences on free speech could be tragic. Just remember that, they're going after free speech, universities, and individuals. Get your guards up. Get your guard up.
Against the values that we
defeat such authoritarianism.
So I'm indeed very worried, and I do fear for the future of American democracy.
Lee Bollinger, thank you so much for joining us.